Hey everyone, it's Michael Kikle. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review here for the Book 5 of The Amazing Spider-Man, the complete Clone Saga epic. Now, I've been reading these for like 4 years. I read through quite a bit of them at first, and I used Goodreads to keep track of which ones I had been through, which ones I had not. As far as I know, this is the final of the Clone Saga collection, but then it spins off into like another 6 volumes of just Ben Reilly being Spider-Man in his own timeline. I think it was called, like, The Spectacular Scarlet Spider was the actual comic series, and, like, Spider-Man Unlimited and stuff are what they're using for that. Have not read those yet. I started Volume 1 of the Ben Reilly Epic Collection last night after I finished this. But I wanted to go ahead and give my thoughts on this, but in case you're new to the channel, this is the first Clone Saga book, and currently as of June 2024, the only review I have for a Clone Saga book at this point. If you're looking for the previous reviews, they don't exist. They don't exist on any channel I have. But I want to make it very clear up from the get-go. Volume 1, 2, and 3 were pretty rough, and I think Volume 4, it was either Volume 3 or Volume 4 that I liked more than most of them, like a good 4 out of 5 star rating. But I haven't been in love with the series, that's why it's taken me so long to work my way through. I've had a lot of time for reading, I love comics, I love Spider-Man, and I love Ben Reilly quite a bit. Sometimes I think I like him just as much as Peter Parker. And I wanted to finalize my, experience with Spider-Man here. And lo and behold, this is not actually the final book. I knew those Ben Reilly books existed because I have the first 4 volumes of that. But I didn't realize that this book here would not finish off those compilations, collections, whatever, all the way to the end of the Clone Saga, which I feel like I've been lied to quite a bit. Anyway, this is when Ben Reilly is really kind of getting his footing about being Spider-Man. Peter Parker, who we follow quite a bit in here, is still struggling with how Mary Jane's about to have the baby, and their marriage is good. He's good. He's just still trying to deal with finding out that he was a clone. And that's kind of a spoiler, but I think most people know what the Clone Saga entailed, how that worked out. No, the resolution is not by the end of this book. I'm assuming that'll be in the Ben Reilly collection, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, this was fine. It was better than Volume 1, 2, and probably the previous one, number 4. I think 3 was my favorite of all of them. If I remember correctly, I think it was. Maybe Volume 4, like I said, I'm not sure. I can't remember. But this is the final one I had. Most of it's written by Tom DeFalco. It can be everything from Web of Spider-Man to Spectacular Spider-Man to Amazing Spider-Man comics, all the way over to a couple of New Warriors issues are in here. And I think there's even a one-shot issue from Mark Waid. Not that I like Mark Waid. I don't really read much of his stuff. I know he's one of the dudes that ruined Daredevil in recent years, but I've not spent a lot of time reading Mark Waid. Maybe he can be good. I don't know. But most of the time, surprisingly, compared to the previous volumes, I would say the art is typically really good. Gary Conway, whatever his name is, and Tom DeFalco write most of this book, if I haven't said that already. I like the art. That's a big bonus for me. That can get me through a bad story, like the New Warriors stories are not bad per se. I just didn't love them. I kind of just skimmed through them because they didn't really have any impact. This particular collection series of the Clone Saga epics, it always bothered me because they felt like they had so much fat on the bones that don't need to be there. All these tie-in issues and stuff of Ben Reilly going off to do stuff by himself, or like there's a Marvel team-up issue in here too that I'm not sure should be in here. There are series issues in here that are really good, that are Peter and Ben working together, and as Spider-Man going on little adventures. There's a lot of filling in information about Ben Reilly himself with this guy named Dr. Seward, whatever. There's a new Dr. Octopus on the horizon who comes up in here, who's a female. If you look to that, if you're excited about that, I don't know. She feels really lame. They have kind of a backstory for her. Doesn't really impress me all that much. They don't do much with it in here, matter of fact. I just don't really love this book. Obviously, I'm a very wish-washed fan of Spider-Man in general when it comes to the comics. I much prefer the games and the movies. The Stan Lee era of comics I think is fantastic. And the 70s and 80s Spider-Man stuff can be good too, depending on what we're talking about. I haven't read all of it, but the stuff I have read, I'm a little mixed on that too, like the death of Gene Wolfe, D-Wolf, whatever. That as well is a great example of one that I own on hardcover, that I got really cheap, and I'm still not impressed with it, despite the art and quality of that book being good. This is a book more so out of this Clone Saga epic collection that's more for the Ben Reilly fans before you even get to this Ben Reilly focused collection series that picks up after this book ends. So if you love Ben Reilly, and love Peter Parker too, and quite a bit of him with some good art, I think you'll like this volume more than most people will. If you're like me and you're just burnt out of this, at this time I guess 2-year-long, but soon to be 4-year-long series of Spider-Man comics that barely have anything to do with Peter or Ben, moving the story along with how it contaminated all of Marvel back in the day in the 90s when this was taking place. If it was obnoxious then when you were around, if you haven't read it before, it is obnoxious. It stays obnoxious, matter of fact. I hadn't read it back in the day. Like I said, this is my first time through these books, and it has taken me like 4 years to read this on Kindle. Because I just can't stand it. I don't think it's that well written most of the time. Peter, like every time Peter shows up in an issue, he is whining about how he thinks he's a clone, he has no purpose. He's been doing that for 4 volumes. And we're talking, these are 500-page books. So I've dealt with Peter talking about this for 2,000 pages at this point, and it's driving me nuts. It's getting on my last nerve, matter of fact. Kane is no longer here, obviously he's dead, and or at least I assume he is. Everybody comes back in comics. Maybe he's not. But the Mary Jane and Peter Parker stuff I really like in here, with the upcoming baby thing. Peter's kind of debating on what to do about possibly not being Spider-Man anymore, which I think a lot of people who are familiar with the storyline probably know how that went. I don't know how I feel about it as of the end of this book. I guess when I read these Ben Reilly books, that'll kind of make up for how I end up feeling about that. Overall, this is not a great book, but I think it's pretty fine as it is. I enjoyed it to an extent. I'm glad I skipped the stuff I skipped, like the New Warrior stuff that really didn't go anywhere at all that actually mattered. It just kind of gave, number one, Ben Reilly a job, and number two, a place for Ben Reilly to stay that wasn't going to maintain him being homeless. I don't know. There's some cool stuff in here. There's quite a bit of hokey bullshit in here too. I have a feeling that despite my annoyance with the constant Peter whining thing, and the constant Ben Reilly thinking about Peter whining thing, I think once I get into those Ben Reilly collections more, that maybe I'll have a better time. They seem to have, some of the books having pictures of Venom and Carnage on them. I'm a big symbiote guy, big Venom fan, big Carnage fan, so hopefully that improves those quite a bit. But I don't know, I'm hoping that those are going to be better than this. I've heard that they can be when Ben Reilly goes off to do his own thing, and apparently he did his own thing for a couple of years in comics and our real timeline, so I don't know. I am not in love with it, obviously. Do I really recommend Volume 5? Not really. You need to read the first 4 volumes, and there's so much bullshit in those first 2 especially. That's 1,000 pages right there you have to work through. That I think is a lot of work, and a lot of wasted time that you never earn the money back. You never earn the time back. You'll think about how much time you wasted on it, just like I do now as I read this book. But this was the least offensive of almost any of them. I think Volume 3 or 4, whichever I thought was the best one, was obviously the best one. This is like the runner-up behind whatever I thought the best one was. It's kind of mild. It's okay. I love 90s art, so I'm cool with that too. And it is what it is. I don't really recommend it to people who are not Spider-Man fans. This Clone Saga stuff will never convert you into a fan, not at all. But if you happen to also be like me, and you're kind of wishy-washy on the Clone Saga stuff already if you started reading it, this is not going to change you over to believing it's any better either, because it doesn't really end. Even though it's book 5, anybody, any normie, any grandparent you showed these 5 books to would say, oh yeah, well number 5 must be the last one because there's no more after it that they know of, called the Clone Saga Epic Collection. And they're wrong. You're wrong. Because Marvel chose the absolute worst way to chronologically collect these, and it really harmed the story. It really did. All these extra things thrown in here, some people might have wanted that back in the day when these were released in collections. Man, I felt like I was losing my voice there. Me personally, not so much, if I'm being honest with you. It's, does this sound like a boring review? It's because it is a boring review for a book that's kind of boring, to be honest with you. It has some cool adventure stuff. The Doc Ock and Dr. Seward stuff doesn't really impress me that much. It's the Ben and Peter stuff that I love and that I read this so much for. But if you're here for that, I think you'll have a good time. Otherwise, not really. Anyway, have you guys read The Amazing Spider-Man, The Complete Clone Saga Epic Collection, Volume 5, Book 5, whatever it's called? If you have, or you read the whole series, all the way to the end of the Ben Reilly stuff, let me know what you think about it. Don't spoil too much for me, but let me know what you think about it. Put your thoughts and comments down below. Do you think it ends up being worth the time? Do you think it's not going to be? I guess I'll work my way through them over time, and I'll try to talk about them. I know Volume 5 and 6 of that Ben Reilly stuff is super expensive, though, so I may struggle finding the final volumes of that. We'll see how that goes. But maybe there's a new trade out there or something I can find those final volumes. Maybe I have to read them digitally. I don't know. But I'll figure out a way. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless you all. Catch you later, and goodbye.